From ashes to hope, discover the inspiring call that transformed a struggling family's future. Sarah Johnson stood at the diner's counter, the smell of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the scent of bacon on the grill. This place was her lifeline. But as she pored over bills at home late into the night, despair crept deeper into her heart. The once bustling town echoed with memories of the factory, now silent and vacant, and each day felt like a reminder of her failures. Her children, Jake and Lily, deserved more. Morning after morning, she wiped away the creeping doubt threatening to swallow her whole. Raising them alone came with its burdens, and failing to provide for them weighed like lead on her chest. Was toughing it out enough? The evening wore on, while Jake struggled with his school project. His confidence began to falter, but as Sarah shuffled through her old school materials to help with marketing strategies, a flicker of inspiration ignited inside her. That hadn't been so daunting, right? Was there something here she could offer? An idea blossomed, a spark of possibility far removed from her daily grind of frying eggs and serving coffee. Could she start a business? As the thought toyed with her heart, the weight shifted ever so slightly, allowing a breath of hope. But there was her old colleague Anne, the very same who'd thrown shade on her ambitions back when teaching seemed like a believable path. Over the years, Anne never missed a chance to undermine her or hold her insecurities at arm's length. What would Anne do if she caught wind of Sarah's desire to succeed? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the days turned into sleepless nights, Sarah transformed their cramped living room into a work zone, pouring every ounce of herself into designing a website that showcased local handcrafted goods. But just as she began to fantasize about her dreams aligning with reality, darkness clouded her spirit. Anne's whispers of doubt flooded every corner of the diner and soon echoed online with scathing reviews. Each click, each shared gossip, chipped away at the fragile confidence she had desperately nurtured. Struggling to balance her children's needs and this growing ambition felt impossible, and nagging questions spun in her mind. What if I'm not good enough? What if this fails and I can't support them? In chilling moments of despair, as dread settled over her like a thick fog, uneasiness froze her movements. The resolve built inside her seemed flimsy against the looming threat of Anne's sabotage. Yet, when Mr. Thompson revealed hidden ties to her family's legacy, connections to a past filled with dreams and unrealized potential, it stoked a fire within. This wasn't just her fight. It was about honoring a lineage of resilience. But standing firm felt daunting against Anne's wicked tactics. Just as she plotted to rally support, a single phone call shattered her fragile composure. The voice on the line smirked, venom dripping like rain, delivering a warning that made her stomach drop. Everything she worked for hung on the precipice of failure. Would she bend, or would she rise? As her heart raced, dread wrapped around her like a vice. What could she sacrifice to maintain her dream? Would her fear defeat her before she could even fight back? In the wake of that chilling phone call, Sarah felt the walls of her small living room closing in, the weight of doubt amplifying the oppressive silence that enveloped her. Just moments ago, clarity sparked within her, but the whispering shadows cast by Anne's manipulation left her hungering for resolve. Ignoring the echo of the smug voice, she pulled her laptop closer, fingers trembling over the keys. This was her moment to reclaim her narrative, to weave her own story amidst the chaos that threatened to engulf her. She took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of determination she could muster. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about making a life for Jake and Lily, a life filled with possibility rather than despair. She dove into her research, scouring countless articles on entrepreneurship, social media marketing, and e-commerce strategies. Each piece of information stitched together a broader picture of her potential. The more she learned, the more the darkened corners of her mind illuminated with possibility. A week passed in a blur of late nights and early mornings as Sarah honed her plan. She meticulously outlined her vision, the mission behind her budding business swirling with meaning, to highlight local artisans and provide a platform for their talent to flourish. If Mr. Thompson's words had sparked something deep within, it was her responsibility to nurture that spark, no matter the fear lingering in her gut. As she developed her brand's essence, she envisioned Jake standing proudly beside her during community events and Lily's eyes lighting up at the vibrant colors of handmade crafts. But amidst her newfound enthusiasm, the specter of Anne's attacks still loomed. A particularly stinging review surfaced online, questioning the quality of her showcased merchandise and branding efforts. Every dim comment felt like a harsh slap, igniting the flames of self-doubt that threatened to consume her passion. Yet instead of surrendering to despair, Sarah clawed her way back to resilience. She decided to confront the onslaught head-on, reaching out to her supportive community at the diner. The friends she'd made through years of serving them became allies, and one by one they offered to help promote her website. Their belief in her vision countered every ounce of Anne's negativity. That support transformed into tangible action. She organized a small launch event at the diner, inviting local artisans to showcase their crafts. As the word spread, the dwindling hope that had once frozen her movements began to thaw. If she could create an atmosphere of collaboration and celebration, she could shift the narrative surrounding her venture. Days spun into a whirlwind of preparation, laughter, and anticipation. Each step danced with energy as Sarah juggled her children's needs and her budding enterprise. But that energy came to a screeching halt when another message arrived from that familiar, loathsome voice. This time, it warned her to abandon the event, claiming it would end in disaster. The threat seeped into her thoughts, a silent whisper of self-doubt threatening to unmask her progress. At that moment, Sarah stood at a crossroads. Would she let Anne's taunts dictate her choices, or would she embrace the courage she discovered through this journey? The weight of her children's future pressed down like an anchor, yet she felt the pulse of her purpose beating louder than the looming dread. As she looked into the determined faces of her supportive friends and the innocent excitement radiating from Jake and Lily, she resolved to face whatever came next, head on. With the launch night approaching, the decision became clear to her. Her quest wasn't just to change her life, but to showcase the power of resilience against the tide of negativity. The moment had come for Sarah to solidify her place in not just the town, but her children's hearts as well. What would happen when Anne learned of her plans? Would the nagging fear shatter her resolve, or would she rise stronger than before? As the day of the launch approached, the air around Sarah crackled with a blend of exhilaration and unease. The weight of anticipation settled onto her shoulders, pushing the remnants of doubt deeper into her subconscious. Right now, she felt the unmistakable surge of determination coursing through her veins. This wasn't just a culmination of weeks of work. It was the manifestation of every late-night brainstorming session, every conversation filled with unfiltered honesty, and every ounce of hope she'd tucked away like fragile glass. In the early hours, with the soft light filtering through her kitchen window, she meticulously prepared. Each action was deliberate. Polishing display tables, arranging artisan products, and perfecting the promotional materials that spoke to her brand's essence. The multi-purpose room of the diner transformed into a vibrant showcase, bursting with the imagination of local creators. Yet, amidst this thrilling chaos, she replayed Anne's last message. "Disaster awaits you," the words echoed, weaving doubt into the fabric of her resolve. In that moment of contemplation, she questioned whether confronting this fear of failure head-on was foolish bravado, or an essential step in claiming her power? The answer materialized gradually, crystallizing into clarity. Every fiber of her being screamed for authenticity. It was vital to challenge the darkness before it could extinguish her burgeoning light. As Sarah hung the final decorations, a knock on the diner door jolted her from introspection. It was Mr. Thompson, his presence a tether to her aspirations and a reminder of her purpose. The sight of his genuine smile anchored her thoughts. They engaged in an earnest conversation about her vision, his words wrapping around her anxieties like a soothing balm, reminding her that vulnerability was not weakness. It was a strength forged in the fires of experience. "It takes courage to put yourself out there," he said. "The world needs to hear your story, not just the artisans, but you. You're not just showcasing their talents, you are weaving a tapestry of community and hope." Connected by a shared understanding, Sarah realized her journey wasn't solely about a business. It was about rewriting the narrative scripted by negativity and taunts. She had already begun reclaiming her life as a storyteller, tasked with illuminating the beauty and resilience present in every piece she represented. As the afternoon approached, she reviewed her presentation notes, firing off reminders about embracing the unexpected. She envisioned how, despite Anne's calculated attempts to sow fear, this would be a night of triumph, of growth. Every worry dissipated as laughter filled the diner, reminding her of the support surrounding her, friends, family, and the very artisans she had championed. The ambiance buzzed with a mixture of excitement and anxiety as attendees began to filter in. Jake and Lily were in the crowd, sharing knowing glances that reassured Sarah of their belief in her endeavor. Each familiar face was a heartbeat pushing her forward. The vibrant colors of her prepared crafts reflected not just her efforts, but also a community's courage. But then came a tension-laden moment when the door swung open, and there stood Anne, her presence slicing through the air like a blade. The room fell silent, eyes darting toward Sarah. Anne's smirk was confident, almost taunting. This was the confrontation that Sarah had dreaded. Would this be the moment where fear resumed its hold on her? Or could she find her voice amidst the chaos? As her heart raced, she felt a shift within, a growing certainty that her narrative belonged to her, not to anyone else. With her chest rising and falling as if weighing 100 pounds, Sarah stepped into the fray, grappling with not just Anne's challenge, but with every doubt that had tainted her journey thus far. As she began to speak, the room leaned in, waiting to hear if she would seize her moment or falter against the looming threat. What words would she choose in that critical moment of confrontation? Would this be the turning point she needed, or would Anne's darkness overshadow her light? The initial rush of adrenaline coursed through her as Sarah faced Anne. Focusing intently on the glimmer of hope she had cultivated, she drew a deep breath, grounding herself in a moment that felt both surreal and monumental. It was no longer simply about the products on display or the evening's proceedings. It was about her journey, her voice, and her reclamation of identity. "Why are you here, Anne?" she asked, her voice steady, laced with a clarity that cut through the tension. The question was not just an inquiry, but an assertion of her renewed self-worth. The room held its breath, caught in a delicate balance of anticipation and uncertainty. Anne's smirk faltered for a moment, revealing a flicker of surprise. It was a small but significant crack in the facade of confidence she often projected. Sarah knew that beneath the surface, even Anne faced her own doubts, perhaps triggered by the strength Sarah was now summoning. This awareness shifted Sarah's perception, not merely identifying Anne as an antagonist, but recognizing her as another woman grappling with insecurities. "I came to see how you've managed to turn this into a circus," Anne retorted, crossing her arms defensively. But Sarah felt empowered by the stakes. Each word exchanged became an opportunity to reclaim her narrative. "Maybe it's not a circus, but a celebration of what we can achieve," she countered, daring to lean into the momentum her words generated. She had a right to exist in this space, to showcase not only the craftsman's skills, but her narrative, a story of perseverance against a backdrop of self-doubt. As laughter erupted from a nearby cluster of guests appreciating the first handmade craft, Sarah focused on the realization that success didn't hinge on pleasing everyone. Each artisan had poured their heart into their creations, just as she had. This event was her dedication to genuine storytelling, one that demanded authenticity over approval. The collective energy of the crowd pulsed around her, feeding her resolve. People shuffled closer, whispering encouragement, and Sarah felt the weight of expectation transform into a wave of support. With each moment, the anxiety that had once paralyzed her began to dissipate, replaced by a fierce determination. Isn't that what life is about? Sarah pressed onward, addressing not just Anne, but anyone willing to listen. Creating something from nothing, daring to share our stories, and lifting each other up in our journeys? The unmistakable warmth and resonance of those words were palpable, igniting a stir within. She understood now that the essence of her venture was empowerment, both hers and that of the artisans standing behind her. Each creation symbolized resilience, representing triumph over personal battles, and it was time to elevate those shared experiences. Projecting her voice higher, she added, "None of us would be here without taking risks, even when faced with criticism. I'm not just fighting for my narrative, I'm standing for yours as well." Undoubtedly, she could sense Anne's tension shifting. The sharpness of her demeanor softened, if only for an instant, as if the walls she built had begun to tremble. Sarah pressed on, knowing that this moment could shift the course of their complicated relationship. Maybe, just maybe, there could be room for understanding and collaboration where rivalry once thrived. As Anne opened her mouth to reply, the loud clinking of a fallen display jar stole the moment. Gasps reverberated throughout the room, and as Sarah turned to face the disturbance, an unexpected wave of uncertainty washed over her once more. Was the fragile structure of her evening about to come crashing down, or was this merely another obstacle to confront? In that rapid moment of uncertainty, she felt a familiar flicker of fear creeping in, but behind it also swelled the radical determination to move forward. Would she be able to harness this new surge of chaos into showing her strength once again? Or had she awakened a challenge greater than she anticipated? The room's energy shifted once more as she assessed the situation before. Taking a deep breath, Sarah braced herself. Nothing could deter her from embracing this moment of unexpected challenge. Would she rise to the occasion, or was this a definitive turning point toward an even greater confrontation? As the clinking sound echoed in her ears, Sarah pivoted sharply, her heart pounding with a mix of dread and anticipation. The fallen display jar had shattered on the floor, scattering shards across the polished surface and a collection of artisan trinkets, each representing the hard work and passion of their creators. For a fleeting moment, she felt the weight of failure pressing against her chest, a whisper that told her this could unravel everything she had worked for. But beneath that fear, a new sense of clarity emerged. Crises, after all, were opportunities shrouded as challenges. The guests began to murmur, their expressions a blend of concern and curiosity. Sarah's instinct kicked in. She would not shy away from this moment. Her gaze flicked back to Anne, whose previous bravado seemed dimmed by the abrupt disruption. Perhaps this was a moment for both women to transcend their rivalry. As the anxiety in the room built, she decided her next steps could either sow further discord or forge a path toward mutual respect. "Let's not allow this to detract from what we've created here," Sarah said, raising her voice with measured authority. "Instead, let's see how we can resolve this together." She took a step forward to the center of the circle that was forming, feeling the eyes of the crowd linger on her. Crouching down, she began to collect the shards. Her fingers grazed the fragile pieces, a stark reminder of the losses they'd all experienced in life, but also the resilience it took to rebuild. As she worked, Sarah felt each small fragment tell a story, of dreams, of hard work, of community, even if it was only the community of artisans sharing their craft. "Who amongst us has not felt the crushing weight of our efforts falling apart?" she asked, glancing up at the gathered onlookers. "This is a moment for us to come together, to show that we can choose to uplift one another, even amid difficulties." In that instant, she saw some heads nodding in agreement, her words resonating. It struck her that in creating space for vulnerability, she was also tapping into the deepest aspect of leadership. It wasn't about commanding respect, it was about earning it through shared experiences and connection. Just as she stood up, Anne surprised her by kneeling to help gather the pieces, an action so unexpected that it paused the room's energy. Sarah met her gaze, and for the first time there was a shared understanding blossoming between them. Perhaps they were both tired of the facade, tired of fighting solo battles, forging identities in opposition to each other rather than alongside. "Perhaps we've been too focused on our differences," Anne admitted, her tone softer. "Maybe we both want the same thing, the chance to make something meaningful." Sarah felt the power of this shift settle within her, a testament to what was possible when one chose empathy over conflict. Together, they worked swiftly to clear the debris, and in their cooperative effort, the atmosphere began to change. When the last piece was gathered, Sarah turned to face the crowd, feeling the pulse of renewed energy swirling around her. "Let's use this moment to recommit ourselves, not just to our individual journeys, but to uplifting each other's as well." The crowd erupted into soft applause, not as a mere form of courtesy, but as a celebration of accountability and solidarity. But just as Sarah began to feel the swell of pride, a stranger from the back shouted, "What's next? Are we just going to forget what happened? That was unprofessional." Her heart dropped as she confronted this new dissent. The momentum she had garnered hung precariously in the air, and she knew that the battle was not fully won. There would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles hidden behind better moments, requiring her to remain vigilant and resolute. "An unexpected incident doesn't define our goals. It's how we choose to handle it that will," she responded, hoping the clarity bled into her voice. But doubt festered somewhere deep within. Was she truly ready for the complexity still looming? As the crowd buzzed with mixed reactions, Sarah instinctively hoped for calm, but prepared for stormy waters. The undeniable truth loomed over her. The confrontation was only just beginning. What awaited her in the fray would require the deepest well of strength she could muster. Would she rise to the challenge, or would the fragmented opinions trap her within their chaos? One thing was certain. She had only scratched the surface of her strength, and the next moment could redefine everything. Sarah stood frozen, the weight of every eye in the room bearing down on her. The jab from the stranger's comment echoed in her mind, reverberating with the familiar pang of insecurity. Was this what she had envisioned? A room filled with whispers, second-guessing her abilities, doubting her leadership? Amidst the applause, she felt adrift, a captain without a steady course amid churning seas. "Respect is built, not demanded," she declared, trying to channel her fear into forcefulness. The words tumbled out, but inside her a storm brewed. She'd always been the one to turn adversity into opportunity, yet here she stood, faced with a sudden critique that threatened to shatter the fragile alliance she'd forged with Anne. Could they truly move past the shadow of their rivalry? Or would the discontent of one voice unearth the fissures she believed were finally healing? The atmosphere thickened with tension. Sarah's heartbeat quickened, a barrage of inner questions striking her. Should she engage with the heckler, defend her decisions, or turn to Anne for allyship, uncertain yet hopeful that they could present a united front? She felt stagnation wrap around her like a fog, and it was then she understood. Silence was no longer an option. "Look," Sarah began, surveying the room, her expression shifting from fear to determination. "Every single one of us has faced a moment that derailed our plans. What matters is how we choose to respond." Her voice rose, steadying as it grew louder. The slight quiver faded with each word. Suddenly, she remembered the trinkets scattered on the ground, symbols of artisans whose dreams were fragile yet potent. Each of you has a voice that deserves to be heard, and this moment is no different. Every challenge brings us an opportunity to dive deeper into our resilience, and we must not allow a single incident to overshadow the art we put forth. A murmur of agreement coursed through the crowd, nervous energy transforming into a collective curiosity. Perhaps the brewing storm was shifting, but Sarah couldn't ignore the sharp glare of the stranger still cutting through the air. What if they didn't understand? What if her call to action fell flat? Let's strive towards accountability, not just for ourselves, but for one another, she continued, glancing at Anne, whose expression was a mixture of surprise and admiration. They could rise above this moment together. This is a time to reflect, learn, and grow, not to cast judgment. So I ask you, what can we do as a community to better ourselves, to support one another? Her question prompted a ripple of contemplative whispers and nods, the hesitation of disagreement cracking slightly. Someone stepped forward, an artisan with a voice that trembled. You're right, Sarah. We have to be our own advocates. Maybe we should share ideas instead of judgments. Energized by this fresh perspective, Sarah felt the weight lift. This was what leadership looked like. It was not merely about guiding a group, but about creating an environment where every participant felt they possessed a stake. She knew she wasn't merely standing at the forefront anymore. She was part of a mosaic, each person valuable. But just as that feeling of camaraderie blossomed, the stranger interrupted again, sharp and incisive. That's just talk. Talk doesn't lead anywhere. What's the plan? Sarah inhaled slowly, the air heavy with the urgency she felt. You're right, she acknowledged, feeling the heat of each word as she accepted the challenge. Action is needed. We will reconvene and create a plan to assess not only our own craftsmanship, but how we can support our peers and learn from one another. The room reverberated with mixed reactions. Some seemed inspired, but the dissent lingered like an ominous cloud. She had opened a door, but beyond it lay more complexities. Would a mere plan suffice to mend bruised egos and divided opinions? Determined to quell the growing doubts, she felt an urgency pulse in her veins. I believe we can turn this into something greater than what we initially envisioned. Let us challenge ourselves, not just with words, but with tangible steps toward progress. As the crowd murmured once more, Sarah realized her work was just beginning. The prospect of leading through chaos was daunting, but with each heartbeat, determination ignited within her. She had begun to tap into a deeper reservoir of strength, one that could redefine her purpose. And just when she thought the tension would crystallize into a clear path forward, the stranger's voice cut through one last time, low and skeptical. Are you sure you're ready for that? The question hung there, a challenge and a revelation all at once. Sarah sensed the weight of it, understanding it could either propel her forward or bring her crashing down. In this moment of uncertainty, one thing was clear. True transformation often demanded more than just resilience. It required unfathomable courage. What awaited her beyond the threshold of self-doubt? Would she find the audacity to confront challenges head-on, or would the shadows of the past always loom larger than her vision? The choices ahead promised to reshape not only her future, but the very essence of who she believed she was. Sarah stood in the pulsing energy of the room, surrounded by uncertainty, yet driven by a freshly ignited commitment to her purpose. The stranger's doubt echoed in her ears, but rather than shrink beneath its weight, it fueled her resolve. Was she ready to confront the brewing storm? In this pivotal moment, she recognized that embracing vulnerability was a strength she had now begun to harness. Ready or not, she murmured to herself, the realization seeping in. Readiness no longer hinged on perfection, but on embracing where she stood. Sarah had spent so long battling insecurities that she'd been blind to her own evolution. Learning would always be a part of the game, but she was learning to lead not just from experience, but from intent. With her heart pumping, she faced the crowd, feeling the prickling awareness of their shared anticipation. "Let me pose a new question," she called out, her voice steadying. "What if we reframed this challenge not as a roadblock, but as a gateway to innovation? What if our solutions come from collaboration instead of separation?" This different angle seemed to weave threads of engagement among the onlookers. Glances exchanged and nods rippled through the audience like a gentle tide shifting. Some faces still bore doubt, but she could feel the balance teetering. But what was she truly empowering with her words? Would they muster the courage to act, or was she merely setting the stage for another round of dissension? Billy, a veteran in the artisan community, stepped forward, confusion mingling with support. "I don't want to band together for a show. I want a concrete plan, something that can stand on its own. Can we really align our visions?" The question struck a chord within Sarah, reverberating with the reality she too faced. There would indeed be no aligning without understanding. "If we collaborate, we have to lay bare our individual visions first," she offered, feeling the words roll off her tongue in a melodious blend of hope and trepidation. She thought of the friction with Anne, once an adversary, now a potential ally. As Anne's understanding eyes made contact with her own, Sarah filled with a rush of determination. "Let's start openly. We need to share what matters most to us, the fears, desires, our dreams." The room shifted, the air filled with the depth of shared vulnerability as people began to unveil their thoughts. Perhaps this was what had always been missing, the space to feel heard. Sarah kept her focus sharp, engaging each person who stepped forward. One by one, they verbalized their aspirations and fears, weaving them into a tapestry of shared experience. In this moment, she recognized her own latent aptitude for creating community, igniting collective purpose. But as voices melded into harmony, the shadow of the stranger still lurked in the background, bringing an edge of doubt. Was she perhaps being foolish to think this one moment could bridge deep divides that had existed for so long? Could she truly change the dynamics that had plagued them? "Is this genuine, or are we simply afraid to do the real work?" the stranger shot back, still intent on sowing doubt. Their words crushed down on her, yet within that criticism lay a seed of possibility, a catalyst for real and raw reflection. Sarah inhaled deeply, the room quieting momentarily as she ruminated on the weight of the challenge. "What is the real work?" she replied, calmness flowing from her vulnerability. "The real work is not just about forging ahead. It's about owning our past, addressing it, and moving through it all with intention and authenticity. And that's messy. It's uncomfortable. But I believe it's worth every ounce of effort we bring to the table." With those words, a shift occurred. She sensed a collective agreement in the air, as if they were standing on the precipice of transformation. Sarah had awakened the longing for genuine connection and accountability, both within herself and among her peers. Yet, just as she felt the exhilarating rush of insight surge through her, a sickening twist of apprehension seized her mind. Was she still the same Sarah who struggled with confidence? Was she opening a door to growth, or merely a trap of heightened expectations she felt ill-prepared to manage? Determined to quell her burgeoning fears, she sought clarity and resolution. The journey she had embarked upon was seldom straightforward, thick with uncertainty and tremors of self-doubt. She stepped forward, channeling the weight of her own history to solidify her intentions, ready to face the possibilities. What awaited her in the depths of this awakening? Would her call for authenticity break through the layers of apprehension, or would her aspirations crumble under the weight of skepticism? As the murmurs of hope and doubt intertwined, she steeled herself for whatever lay ahead, aware that fortitude only flourished when tempered with both spirit and humility. The air grew denser, charged with the weight of unspoken challenges and the fragile hope that coursed through the room. As Sarah scanned the faces before her, some illuminated with fresh interest, others still clouded in doubt, she realized that her own determination must evolve beyond the current moment. If she was to guide this group towards a meaningful outcome, it would require decisiveness, resilience, and a more profound understanding of herself. Let's break down those visions, share our hurdles. She projected her voice again, this time laced with urgency. What has held you back from voicing your truth thus far? I don't want platitudes, I want your genuine insights. Her words hung in the air, an invitation wrapped in challenge. The crowd stirred. She could sense the tentativeness of their hesitations, a mix of fear and reluctance that mirrored her own experiences. Billy stepped forward again, brow furrowed. It's easy to talk about dreams, but what if we fail? What if these ideas lead us nowhere? The familiar edge of vulnerability returned, and for a moment, Sarah wavered. The truth of the question echoed her internal struggle. Fear of failure had held her back for years, molding her choices and dragging her self-worth into the shadowy depths. But this was precisely the crux of her evolving journey. It hinged on addressing such fears rather than retreating. Failure is not just an endpoint, she countered, sensing the weight of her words fortify her stance. It's part of the process. Each misstep is an opportunity to learn. Failure becomes our teacher when we approach it with a mindset of growth. Sarah felt an unfamiliar strength flowing through her, and as she spoke, she desperately hoped it resonated with those present. It wasn't merely about her journey, it was collective. The room remained charged, though uncertainty painted its visage. She had to embrace the awkwardness accompanying her own realizations and show them that in uncertainty lay possibility. Anne shifted forward and caught Sarah's eye with earnest sincerity. I've felt crushed by expectations my entire life. The fear of disappointing others has stopped me from pursuing what I want. How do we let go of that? The question curled like smoke and engulfed Sarah. She exhaled, contemplating Anne's vulnerability, a reflection of her own. What if we redefine what it means to be disappointed? In the context of our ambitions, can we perceive it not as failing ourselves, but as an opportunity for strength? Can we accept that each disappointment can fortify our grit? She could feel a tentative collective nod ripple through the audience, as though they were beginning to digest the possibility that those burdens didn't have to define them. Yet, just as quickly, a shiver of doubt ran through Sarah. Was she equipped to lead them down this arduous path? The memories of her past failures echoed ominously in her mind. But then she remembered. Each time she had faced the abyss, it had tested her resolve. It had shaped her and molded her purpose. Perhaps this was what she needed to acknowledge in herself and in others, the recognition of shared struggle and the embrace of collective growth. I stand here, scarred, but not broken. She embraced the irony in her delivery, edging closer to a core truth. What if our brokenness speaks of our humanity? What if we lift each other up through our imperfections? We already have a foundation built on honesty. Let's build from there. As anticipation slid into a contemplative silence among the crowd, Sarah sensed a shift, a deeper understanding settling within each participant, much like her own awakening. They needed to embark on this journey together, no longer just as individuals confronting fears, but as a united front against self-doubt. Then the stranger's voice clawed its way through the newfound connection. You think this all sounds noble? But can you honestly say you're ready to face the consequences when it doesn't work? The words hung heavily, threatening to unravel the threads of hope she had begun to weave. Yet instead of crumbling, Sarah felt the embers of fear ignite within her determination. I am ready, she stated, her voice ringing out with clarity. Not just to face the consequences, but to embrace them, with all the lessons they bring. She locked eyes with the stranger, courage intertwined with her uncertainty. She understood now that every moment of doubt transformed into fuel for her journey. A revelation dawned on her. The call for authenticity wasn't merely about the belief in her vision, but about daring to act even when the ground felt unsteady. What awaited her on the other side of this awakening? As she contemplated her next steps, the idea loomed large. The path to genuine connection would demand not only accountability, but relentless authenticity. Would she be able to sustain this newfound resolve as future challenges continuously tested her commitment? The moment hung, suspended in time, waiting for a breakthrough or a breakdown. The room remained heavy with uncertainty, shadows of doubt clinging to the walls, only broken by the soft hum of murmurs. As Sarah absorbed the tension, she realized the burden of expectation weighed not just on her shoulders, but upon each individual present. It wasn't merely about her and her ability to lead, it was about each member's individual willingness to confront their own demons. "Let's not shy away from those fears," Sarah urged, her voice gaining confidence. "Let's name them and expose them to the light." With this declaration, she began to walk among them, eyeing eager and anxious faces as she encouraged them to articulate their fears. It was a risk, a gamble of vulnerability that required her to lead through her own discomfort first. As she stepped closer to a group in the corner, she caught a fleeting glimpse of her reflection in their eyes, revealing not only her determination, but also the flicker of acknowledgement that chased away some of the depth of their trepidation. "Blame!" A hesitant voice rose from the back, its owner half buried in the group. "I blame myself for not achieving more. I'm scared that my past mistakes will overshadow anything I try to create now." "Yes," Sarah responded, pivoting to face the speaker, a young man whose name she couldn't recall. "A feeling many of us can relate to. But what if we redefine that blame? It's a shackle that binds us. If we can see our mistakes as lessons, accept those who refuse to learn from them, might we not find freedom in understanding ourselves better?" The conversation shifted as more people began to share. Each story uncloaked layers of shared vulnerability, revealing raw seams of their truths. While they spoke of dreams thwarted, guilt lingered, and regret festooned like seeds waiting to bloom, the collective vulnerability began to shift the energy in the room from fear to solidarity. Sarah could feel the subtle alchemy of connection happen, igniting the potential for inspiration. "Does anyone else feel a weight from their past?" she inquired, inviting others to share their burdens. Slowly, hands rose. The stories poured out, and through every narrative, Sarah felt a deepening connection with each person. As they expressed their fears aloud, something fundamental started to unravel within her, within them. Each reflection beckoned authenticity, not only from their lips, but deep within their hearts. But this catharsis didn't come without its own challenges. A rising voice of doubt, the stranger from earlier, interrupted again. "But how do we really change? Not just for a moment, but in the long haul?" Sarah paused, the question stirring a tempest within her. For a heartbeat, she considered retreating into her echoes of self-doubt, but the clarity of her purpose surged. "Change requires intention coupled with action," she affirmed, grounding her gaze into the stranger's. "It's not a magic trick. It's a process. We have the power to create daily habits that reflect our intentions. It must be a practice, a commitment to ourselves." The atmosphere grew taut. Determination flickered in the eyes surrounding her. She held the moment as she wrestled with her own anxieties, her pulse steadying as the gravity of her words took hold. Clearly, she was navigating uncharted territory, and yet she was watching a path form through the shared acknowledgement of hardship. "Do we dare to make space for our own growth?" she continued, the thread of courage weaving through her spirit. "Do we dare to become architects of our own lives, chiseling away at doubt with each step we take together?" As the crowd resonated with her words, Sarah realized that the lesson had to move beyond her leading voice and shift towards the collective dialogue, an orchestra of personal growth. They had begun the journey, but the depth of their resolve rested precariously on the cusp of action. Would this group truly transform their unspoken fears into stepping stones toward healing? The prospect loomed larger than her initial vision. Each transformation demanded individual ownership and collective support. Yet, the memory of her own fears loomed as a reminder. Perhaps she would have to be the first to test this resilience. Would she dive forward into the chaos and invite them with her? Or would she falter before the challenge began to take shape? The stakes felt higher, the risk more palpable. "Next week," she declared, tapping into the burgeoning courage welling within her, "I want us to share an actionable step we've taken toward addressing our fears. Let's turn our collective insights into initiatives. Are you with me?" The crowd buzzed with anticipation, the excitement mingling with uncertainty. As they nodded, Sarah felt both exhilarated and terrified. The commitment to each other had become real. This was merely the beginning. In that moment, as the energy of the room surged with newfound purpose, one lingering thread of thought pierced through. Was she truly equipped to steer this ship toward the stormy seas of their emotional landscapes? And lurking within her mind, the question surfaced anew. What else lay in wait as she ventured further into the unknown? Sarah Johnson stood before the crowd at the diner, a whirlwind of emotions churning within her. The event had transformed from a moment of dread into an occasion charged with promise. But the stakes were higher than ever before. Looking into the faces of those who had once cast doubt upon her, she felt the weight of their hopes resting upon her shoulders. This was no longer merely about her ambitions. It was a shared journey toward something larger than herself. At that moment, Sarah embraced the gravity of responsibility. She realized that change required not just vulnerability, but a roadmap to navigate the realms of their collective fears. "Next week," she reiterated, her tone steady, "I want us to share practical steps we'll take toward addressing our individual fears. This isn't just a gathering, it's a commitment to growth, both personally and as a community." A ripple of energy surged through the crowd, and as she scanned their faces, Sarah witnessed a tangible shift. No longer were they passive observers, waiting for her to lead them. They appeared engaged, ready to invest in their futures. With each nod, she felt an exhilarating sense of validation. She had ignited a spark of action, one that resonated beyond herself. Later, as she prepared to leave the diner, Jake and Lily approached her, their expressions a blend of pride and curiosity. "Mom," Jake said, "did you really mean what you said? About sharing what we're going to do?" There was a flicker of hope in his eyes. In that moment, Sarah felt a profound realization. The lesson had spilled beyond business. It permeated the essence of parenting. It was about showing her children that it was perfectly acceptable to fail, as long as one remained committed to rising again. "Yes, sweetheart," she replied, her voice soothing yet resolute. "We're all going to commit to taking steps, no matter how small, toward what we want. That's how we conquer fear." The clarity of her purpose solidified in her mind as she steered her thoughts toward actionable items. She began sketching her plan, a refined version of her vision to support local artisans while addressing the deeper issues that plagued the community. This was a multifaceted journey, one that demanded equal parts authenticity and innovation. In the ensuing days, Sarah dove into networking and planning, building alliances with other local artisans. Together, they formulated strategies for sustainable outreach, a way to promote their crafts while supporting each other through accountability. Instead of being defined by Anne's skepticism, Sarah emerged fiercely committed to lifting the veil of doubt and replacing it with a vibrant tapestry of collective resilience. By the time the second event drew near, she had not only refined her business model, but also garnered recognition for her efforts. Local media outlets featured her journey and the collaborative impetus that had ignited throughout the community. Sarah had achieved what once felt impossible, translating her dreams into a reality that acknowledged both personal growth and the tenacity of her community's spirit. At the launch of the second event, as she stood behind the display of beautifully crafted goods, Sarah felt a rush of pride wash over her. She spotted Anne from across the room, engaged in a conversation with a fellow artisan, a stark reminder of their earlier rivalry. But instead of tension, Sarah felt a strange kinship. They were both women navigating their respective journeys, learning from the challenges life had thrown their way. As the event unfolded, it became apparent that the narratives had shifted, not just hers, but everyone present. Sarah watched as conversations bloomed, alliances formed, and dreams shared in a radiant exchange of courage. For the first time, self-expression thrived in a space built on mutual support. With every connection made, the remnants of fear dissipated, replaced by a palpable sense of solidarity. The night concluded with laughter and applause, but the true applause came from within her. Sarah had transformed, conquering both self-doubt and external resistance. In the days that followed, as acknowledgement poured in from the community, she walked in solid confidence. Sarah had not just established a business, she had woven herself into the fabric of a community, marking her place with determination and compassion. She felt recognized now, not just as a vendor of crafts, but as a beacon for others navigating their fears. And in her heart, she realized the journey was far from over. With renewed commitment, she planned for the next steps: more workshops, more collaboration, and an expanded platform where stories could intertwine, one small triumph at a time. Sarah Johnson had risen from uncertainty, shaping her narrative into one of achievement and empowerment for herself and those she cherished the most. The weight that once pressed on her heart now felt like a charge. She was ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. This was the moment she had long awaited, the acknowledgement that true success is not defined by accomplishments, but by the willingness to transform fear into opportunity. Now, more than ever, Sarah knew that every step, every connection, and every challenge would only serve to illuminate her path forward. She was undeniably grateful, aware that her quest for fulfillment marked not just a personal victory, but a testament to the power of courage shared within a community. As she closed her eyes, the future glimmered bright, not as a destination, but as an open invitation for the endless possibilities that awaited. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.